Welcome to another deep dive. Wow, you guys have really outdone yourselves this time. The Sacamantecas.
The fat extractor.
Literally. I mean, just the name alone, right?
Yeah.
Sends shivers down your spine.
Oh, yeah. Definitely attention grabbing. And it just speaks to that primal fear, like a violation of the body. Fascinating and horrifying all at once.
Absolutely. And the sources you've sent, YouTube videos, transcripts, historical accounts, really digging into individuals tied to this gruesome title.
It's definitely a journey into, the dark side of history. We'll be trying to figure out what's fact, what's folklore, and I guess try to understand those darker impulses in human behavior.
So where do we even start with something like this? I mean, several sources focus on Juan Diaz de Garallo, the Sacamantecas de Vitoria, this laborer. He was born in 1821, and he committed a series of murders in Spain between 1870 and 1879.
I think to understand Garay's story, we really need to look at Spain in the late 1800s. A nation dealing with poverty, political turmoil. The justice system was still kind of in its early stages. That context is important. Really shaped not only Garay's actions, but also how the public perceived him.
It's like a perfect storm for fear and suspicion, right?
Yeah.
And Garallo, well, he didn't exactly help matters. 6 confirmed victims, teenagers to women in their 50s. Sadly, a lot of them were prostitutes. And his MO, strangulation, often followed by disembowelment. It's hard to even imagine that level of brutality.
Yeah, and some of the sources suggest that his later victims, they were even more mutilated, possibly to throw off investigators. Adds a whole other level of, cunning to an already horrific story.
It's mind-boggling. Like, how someone could be so calculated amidst such savagery. But his capture is just as chilling. A young girl. She identified him, terrified, at the Sacamantecas. That led directly to his arrest. I mean, I can't imagine the weight of those words,
Yeah.
how they must have echoed through that community.
It shows how these figures, they become almost larger than life. Mythical boogeymen, representing society's deepest fears. Garallo, he became the face of this terrifying archetype. Violence lurking in the shadows.
And then you have the sources talking about his mental state. Some experts at the time, they labeled him with this term, moral idiocy. But others thought he was totally responsible for what he did.
Moral idiocy. Wow, it really shows you how much we didn't understand about mental health back then. Basically, it implies a flaw in moral reasoning. No empathy, no conscience. Today, these cases are looked at so differently, right? It makes you wonder, would Garallo be judged the same way in a modern courtroom?
Right. It really makes you think about how societal beliefs, how scientific understanding, they shape how we see crime and punishment, like the whole evolution of criminal psychology and how we grapple with, culpability and mental health. And ultimately, Garallo was executed by Grodville in 1881. But even in death, his story takes this bizarre turn. Scientists, they became obsessed with his skull. They thought it held clues to his, criminal mind.
Oh yeah, phrenology, the study of skull shapes.
Yeah.
Huge back then. Scientists were trying to find a way to physically identify born criminals. Imagine how eager they were to study the Sacamantecas through his skull.
It's like something straight out of a Gothic novel. And to make it even weirder, the skull, it's gone missing. The object that was supposed to unlock the secrets of his mind, now it's a mystery itself.
It's a pretty fittingly macabre ending to Garallo's story, forever shrouded in mystery.
Okay, so then the sources shift gears and they introduce another Sacamantecas, Francisco Leona, the Sacamantecas de Gador. Now we're in the Almeria region of Spain, 1910. This Leona, he was a barber, but also a, a curandero?
A traditional folk healer.
Right. And it's important to understand Gador. It was this rural, poor region. Superstition and traditional beliefs were really powerful there. These communities, folk healers, they were authority figures. Their remedies came from ancient traditions, not modern medicine. It's like stepping into a world where folk wisdom and fear of the unknown were more powerful than, science.
Exactly. And that's a really important connection between Garallo and Leona, their backgrounds. They're both products of their environments. Poverty, limited access to education, and reliance on these traditional beliefs makes you think, how much did that contribute to their actions?
So, how did Leona get the name Sacamantecas? Get ready, this one is unsettling. He was involved in the ritual killing of a young boy, Bernardo Gonzalez. The belief, at least the one Leona was pushing, was that this boy's blood and fat could cure tuberculosis.
This case really shows a disturbing side of traditional beliefs, how desperation and lack of knowledge can be used for evil.
It's horrifying to think that something so baseless a belief, rooted in fear and desperation, could lead to something so tragic. But it gets worse. Leona manipulated a mentally disabled man, Julio Tonto, got him to help with the abduction, exploited his vulnerability for his own sick plan.
It's a pattern we see over and over again. People in power exploiting those who are vulnerable for their own gain.
And as if that wasn't enough, there was a wealthy farmer involved, El Maruno. He was the one looking for the cure. Totally convinced that this ritual would work. I guess desperation can make anyone believe anything, huh?
Absolutely. It reminds us how fear and desperation can, shut down our critical thinking, make us easy targets for exploitation.
Thankfully, the authorities, led by this really sharp guy, Cabo Mañez, they figured out what happened and arrested Leona and his accomplices.
Shows you the importance of people who fight for justice and truth, right? No matter the odds.
But that wasn't the end of the story. The Sacamantecas became this figure in Spanish folklore. They used him to scare kids and warn women to be careful of strangers.
That's how myths are born. The Sacamantecas became this archetype, a boogeyman, embodying that fear of the unknown, the stranger who preys on the vulnerable.
It's like a cautionary tale passed down through generations, a way to, instill fear and enforce social norms. And it's wild how these stories evolve, reflecting the anxieties at different times and the belief in human fat having medicinal properties.
Oh.
Totally unfounded, but it's pretty common throughout history, wasn't it?
It is incredible, right? It shows how powerful those folk traditions are, how these beliefs, even if they're demonstrably false, can last for centuries. And it's not just Spain. Think about the alchemists looking for eternal life, or all the cultures that believed human remains had magical powers.
It's like a glimpse into a world where magic and superstition were just part of life. It makes you wonder, where did that belief in human fat as medicine come from? Why did it stick around for so long, even when there was evidence against it?
That's a great question, and it takes us beyond the sensationalism of the Sacamantecas and into how different cultures deal with illness, with death, with trying to find cures.
Like peeling back the layers of history, seeing those complex interactions between beliefs, desperation, and people's desire to control things they can't. Makes you wonder, are there any similar beliefs in our modern world?
That's a really good point. We might laugh at the idea of human fat being medicine today. But what about the stuff we believe in? Are there things future generations will find just as crazy? It challenges us to look at our own assumptions, to see how powerful culture really is.
That's something to think about for sure, especially as we keep going deeper into this world of the Sacamantecas and try to understand this chilling myth.
It's like we're seeing this distorted version of ourselves. We think we're so advanced, but who knows what future generations will think about our beliefs.
I know, right? It really gets you thinking. Even today, there are people who believe these crazy health fads, conspiracy theories, all this information at our fingertips, and still. So yeah, maybe the Sacamantecas isn't so ancient after all.
Exactly. The details change, but the basic human stuff, fear, desperation, wanting easy answers, that never goes away.
Like a cautionary tale, right?
We need to question the information we're flooded with, look for different viewpoints, and be cautious of anyone who offers simple solutions to complex problems.
We can't let fear control us, but we also can't be, naive. Finding that balance is tough. But how do we put this into practice? How can we equip ourselves and others with that Sacamantecas radar you talked about?
It starts with being aware, knowing that fear is a powerful motivator, and that there are always going to be people who try to use it to their advantage. Pay attention to how information is presented, who's presenting it, and what their agenda might be.
So we should be asking ourselves questions like, who benefits from me believing this? Or what evidence supports this?
Exactly. And don't hesitate to question information, even if it comes from a source you usually trust. Being a little skeptical can go a long way.
It's like we have to become our own fact checkers, evaluating everything we come across. But that can be overwhelming. There's so much information thrown at us all the time.
I get it. It's a lot. But you don't have to go it alone. There are resources out there to help. There are organizations focused on media literacy, fact-checking. They can be really useful.
Oh, that's right. There are whole communities working to debunk misinformation and promote, critical thinking. We can learn from each other, build a defense together.
Exactly. And knowledge is power. The more we understand these manipulation tactics, the better we can resist them.
So we're building up our mental defenses against these modern-day Sacamantecas. But what I've really taken away from this whole deep dive is that it's not just about protecting ourselves. It's about protecting those who are more vulnerable to this kind of exploitation.
That's a really important point. We have a responsibility to watch out for each other, to call out misinformation. That's how we build a stronger, more informed society, one that's less vulnerable to these modern-day boogeymen.
Well said. We hope this deep dive has been informative and maybe even empowering,
Yeah.
that you've come away with a better understanding of how to navigate the world, with confidence and a critical eye. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay vigilant.